What is up, everybody, and welcome to REIL Talks podcast. We're going to break down what it takes to live life on your terms through entrepreneurship, specifically real estate investing. So we're going to hit it hard, the good, the bad, and the real, because that climb, as any entrepreneur knows, is never smooth. My name is Mike Singletary. I'm your host. So let's get real. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of REIL Talks. We have a super interesting guest here today. I'm excited to talk to him. He has a fascinating story. And so I kind of want to break it down, his bio down. So back in 2001, Tom was broke as a joke. And that's his words. Had a near-death experience while whitewater rafting. And it pushed him to find a new way to break free of his 9-to-5 job. His first deal almost took him under as well, it seems like, and found his way through it. But real estate investing saved him both personally and financially. Hundreds of deals later, he's happy to share the same negotiation, marketing, and business techniques that set him free, and he likes to share that with other people. It's simple, it's structured, it's step-by-step. These techniques takes you from spinning your wheels to doing profitable deals. So, Tom, my man, how are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, I am super excited to talk to you. I am into a lot of the things that you're into. You're obviously into sales. I'm into sales. I love it, you know. You obviously had an experience that I think is unbelievably fascinating. We got to talk about it, man. I mean, because I believe it, right? I'm a believer. I put myself out there all the time. I'm a believer, and I believe there's something, and I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. You know, so a lot of people don't like talking about that kind of stuff, but I don't shy away from it. And I'm just fascinated to hear your story.
Yeah, interesting you put it that way, because I guess, a lot of times people say, well, why would a loving God let bad things happen to good people? And why would you struggle? Well, because I think it brings about a greater good. Yeah. That's why, right? You have to be, you have struggle, you have trauma. Evil exists because it brings about a greater good if you let it happen. And that's in many ways what's happened to me. I went from not quite starving, but definitely dead broke. And dead broke from no one's fault but my own. Right? It was no one is to blame except me. I can look in the mirror now and realize totally every mistake that I made 24 plus years ago. I was just wildly fiscally irresponsible. I spent every penny I had and more. I mean, credit cards let you do that. I mean, you just can literally spend yourself into oblivion, an oblivion that you can't really get out of. And I sat there one day and added it all up and went, yikes, how am I going to get out of this? Wow. I mean, I finally understood the damage I had done. Rather than just give me more. I went, I'm stuck. And there was one morning that I woke up and couldn't breathe. And it was it was a panic attack. No, I'd never had one before. Haven't had one since. But that one day that was the day I realized the money's ending and there's no way out. And I went, what am I going to do? So I did the only logical thing that any fiscally irresponsible person like myself back then would do. I took my 2 weeks of vacation. I put even more money on credit cards, and I booked a giant adventure trip to India with a bunch of my buddies. Because nothing like a little bit of escapism, Mike, to really make a bad situation worse. So it was on that trip that this drowning continued. It went from metaphorical to physical, and once back in metaphorical, but physical drowning. I go whitewater rafting. I'm on the Ganges River in India, and I can't stay on the raft. And there's a certain point where we're in a really rough kind of class 5 rapid, and the raft tips and flops, and I went whoosh, off the edge and under the water. And there was a while where you're going, hey, I guess I'll come up. I mean, things can't really go that wrong. Isn't this like a ride at an amusement park where it's guaranteed to be safe? I had a life vest on, I had a helmet on, but I kept bumping in the rocks and stuff. I'm thinking, geez, what if I face plant, or what if I get stuck? What if the water pressure pins me down? I mean, suddenly you realize this is nothing to screw around with. But rather than get overly scared at that point. When I was kind of facing everything, I went, oh, wait, what have I done? All I've done is spend myself in oblivion. And then my solution was to escape on a trip just because I love traveling. I love my trips. So what, give me another hit? Angry with myself. I said, when I get out of this, I'm going to make things different. Things are going to be totally different. I'm going to solve all this problem. I'm going to pay off all this debt. Everything's going to be great. And then my head came above water. All my friends on the raft were laughing at me hysterically, as guys tend to do to each other. And, like when I got home, you know what changed? Absolutely nothing. There I was back at the same desk in the same job with the same low paycheck with more month than money. And the same 113 grand. Well, now it had gone up because it was 113 grand in debt plus the cost of the trip. And I was drowning again. And what on earth do I do?
So was it a real NDE, or did you have that moment just in like a clarity thought as you're going under the water? Was it actually that you passed and then came back?
No, I didn't totally pass out. So it was near-death experiences, as my vision was starting to cloud down at one point. I don't know if you had a near-death experience before?
I haven't. I've read plenty about it and, stuff like that. No, I haven't.
Yeah. Have you ever passed out before?
Yes, I've had that.
Can you remember the last few seconds before it happened where you literally do kind of get tunnel vision? Yeah, it's almost like you can be down to a speck of light. Yeah, I was down really narrow and I'm going, oh, crap, I'm going to pass out. Oh, no.
Were you afraid?
Well, that was when the fear should have kicked in. And instead, I was angry. I was I was mad at myself. Yeah. What have I done? Why? What have I've done nothing. I'm a couple years out of college. I racked up a ton of debt. I'm not thrilled with the job. I'm not thrilled with the commute. I'm not thrilled with the boss. I'm not thrilled with the staff. I mean, it was just suddenly like everything was, I went, why? And I wanted to figure a way out of that. And it was that moment underwater changed things for me. Mm-hmm. But then when I came back home and was metaphorically drowning again, drowning in the debt, drowning with no time off, just drowning, then I said, wow, how am I going to get out of this? Which is oddly when a friend handed me a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a book probably many of your listeners have read. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. In fact, it spoke to that frustration I had when I was drowning, but this time it gave me the answer. It gave me the way out. It said, invest in real estate. And it made it sound easy.
It always does, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because there's so many people in that situation right now, living that life that you lived, right? And then going into real estate even, and I'm realizing that, this is the hardest way to make an easy dollar, right? So, and then they create another prison for themselves within real estate.
Yes.
Because this podcast is all about our entrepreneurial hero's journey. And it sounds like you had a pretty great story to tell, right? Yeah. So tell me about that transition from corporate, I'm assuming it's corporate America. And then obviously you're going into your first deal, which wasn't exactly a blockbuster either.
Oh,
so you kept taking the hits, right? You kept So tell me about that.
I walked into another trap because I didn't know what I was doing. I read one book that had a lot of philosophy and great mental attitude, but no actual how-to. So I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't even own my own property. And here I went out and tried to buy a multi-unit property. I bought a 6-unit building. And then of all places to buy it in, it was New York City, landlord friendly, New York City. So I was making a bad situation, not just worse, but a lot worse. And I wound up, I had convinced my sister that this was our way out. I had her read the same book and she kind of snapped. So this is going to solve our problems. And so we bought that 6-unit building together. And I'll tell you, my sister,
how did you fund it? Because at that time you were broke, right?
Yep, we're broke. Yeah. So this is 2001. So we're both broke, but as long as we could fog a mirror and prove we were alive, the banks would give you a loan for property. I mean, I can't imagine why there was a giant financial meltdown a few years later. It's pre-2008. It didn't take much. So we got a $450,000 mortgage to buy a really rundown 6-unit building in Brooklyn, New York, that had 6 very professional tenants. I knew exactly what they were doing, never pay a dime. And somehow my so-called quote unquote due diligence missed that really small fact that, yeah, there's what the rents should be, and then there's what is actually being collected. And what the rent should be was, well, sure, that looked rosy and great, but what the actual amount being collected was a big fat zero.
Interesting. How did you get out of it, man?
Well, we walked away from it at a certain point. That certain point was when one of the tenants attacked my sister. My sister went over to try to collect some rent, and one of the tenants got mouthy with her and said, "Hey, I'm sick and tired of you coming around here all the time asking for money." Well, that's rent. I mean, are we sick and tired of you not paying? I mean, you're effectively stealing from us. But it didn't matter. The tenant reached out, grabbed my sister's head, and smacked it into the wall.
Okay.
Yeah. At which point I said, Trace, we're done. Forget it. We've screwed something up majorly. That this isn't worth dying for. Let's just walk away. And so we let the property go, and we slid into a pre-foreclosure situation.
Okay. So what's next? How did you bounce back, man?
Well, this is interesting. And I think there's a lot of lessons for the modern real estate investor, entrepreneur, for anyone in business, is that, during this time, I discovered my local real estate investors association. And I started going there and I'm like, wow, there's people that actually do this. And they rehab properties, they landlord properties, they seem to be successful. They want more properties. I guess this stuff does actually work. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If there's all these investors out there looking for motivated sellers, oftentimes who are just tired landlords or sick and tired landlords, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I'm a sick and tired landlord. Why isn't anybody calling me? I would happily sell this property for anything. I don't care. I just need the problem solved. I don't care about the price. And so nobody reached out. And I thought, this is kind of odd. So my sister and I said, well, you know what? We're trying to be real estate investors. Why don't we do a reverse marketing plan? Why, as motivated sellers, let's market to find investors that can save us from this problem. And so we called every bandit sign, every ad in the classified section of the newspaper. It was the early days of the internet advertising, but we called everything we could find anyway. We called everybody, Mike. And guess how many people answered the phone?
0.
Bingo, 0. Oh, and guess how many people returned my calls?
Once again, 0.
Another big fat 0. I was shocked. Well, I'm sorry. Do I not sound desperate enough on the phone? I mean, my messages didn't exactly hold anything back. And I went, wow, this is incredible. And I've kept that lesson in mind to this day, because between my own investing and the students I teach all across the country, they're always worried about, it doesn't work here. There's too much competition here. Like, guys, forget your competition. They ain't doing anything. They're not doing anything. They're lucky that they're advertising and they're paying for that advertising, but they don't bother answering the phone or calling anyone back. What was the point of paying for the advertising? It shocked me.
People are scared to get on the phone.
I think that's a big part.
Yeah, people are scared to get on the phone. I find that to be the case with my students. I find that to a lot of the educators, they have that problem that for whatever reason, people don't want to have that conversation. And, we're in an industry where it takes having a tough conversation. You're talking to people that have tough issues, right? So how do you navigate? How do you tell your students to walk through it?
I say, look, you've got to just start practicing. I think the only way to get over the fear of it is to actually do it. So I try to have them start small. Make 1 call, make another call, make 3 calls. Now make 3 calls a week. Now make 5 calls. Now make 10 calls. Okay, tell me this isn't getting easier, because after each time I'll remind them, hey, are you still breathing? Oh, that person was nasty to you? A student emailed me the other day, said, I got this nasty call. Person cussed me out, and I said, my response was, congratulations. That's awesome. That means you're well on your way to success, because we all have to go through that phase. You have to get those, and you're still alive. You're still breathing. Everything's fine. You'll never go to talk to that person again. So who cares what they called you? Who cares what they said to you? And I think that after you do that 5, 10, 15 times, you understand that, hey, I'm fine. I'm alive. Let me just keep doing this. And if you start to get a little bit addicted to those rejections, those no's, the yes is coming. And that keeps you going through all the no's and all the rejections, because you're looking for that next yes.
That's so true. I say that all the time to my team, especially the new people that are coming in, because we do a lot of outbound. So it's like, man, just to embrace the no, you're getting closer, right? And to your point, I literally say that it's like they can't reach through the phone to hurt you. Like there's nothing they could possibly do to you except for maybe cuss you out, right? I mean, that's it, right? And that's I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're having a bad day.
Yep.
On to the next one.
Well, because my answer then too is even some of my students find it a little bewildering. They say, well, so you'll never talk to them again? I said, well, honestly, I would put a follow-up reminder on my calendar in a month, and I would call them back.
I will follow up. If they're on my list, I will follow up. That house sells or whatever. I will follow up forever, right?
Because in a month, they might actually be happy to hear from you. And they probably won't remember the specifics. And if they do, they're going to go, oh, that's pretty ballsy that you called me back.
100%.
You're a real glutton for punishment.
100%. So you're a sales guy. Is there a system that you follow? Did you create a system? And the reason why I say that is because I started in this industry. I was not a sales guy at all. I think we're all in sales. We just don't realize it.
Well, I was to say, I cringed when you said it.
Yeah.
I have this impression about salesmen that other people are, but in a way, I've got to convince people to sell me their property to both solve their problems and to give me the life and lifestyle I want. So I've got to admit that, there's a sales element to it.
It's a huge sale. I mean, we're in a sales and marketing business. Houses just have to be the widget, right? Yep. So talk to me about your sales process and how you train somebody that has zero sales experience, even though they've been selling themselves their whole life, into a repeatable process that gets, repeatable results, right? Yeah.
Well, I start off by, there's two things. I view myself as a negotiator, a deal negotiator. Look, that's probably just another way of saying sales, but sales has such a negative connotation around it that the first thing I want to do is kind of reframe it in my mind. So I'm in a space that I like, that I think other people like. Now, I mean, a lot of people confuse negotiation and sales anyway, so it doesn't always make them feel better instantly, but it's usually a little bit easier to work with. And you say, look, and what we're after in the good negotiation, and I know this sounds kind of corny and old-fashioned and cheesy, but we're after a win-win scenario. I'm trying to make a win for the other person, and I'm trying to win at the same time. And some people think that, again, that's not feasible. How can you both win? There's got to be a winner and a loser. Well, I say, no, that's not true at all. You can both win if you're not arguing about the same thing. If you're not after the same thing, then you both can win. So I'm an investor. I've got to get the price right. Okay, that's all, right? I'm in business. The price has to be right. I've got to win on price. So if they have to win on price also, well, now there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser, and it doesn't work. But if I can win on price, and let's say their number one issue is solving their problem, stopping their pain, getting out from under the burden of this house, dealing with this problem property that they inherited from across the country, and they're too busy with work and their own family and everything else to take any time off to go deal with it, then I'm solving their headache and I'm helping them with this crisis. That's what they're going to win on, and I can get my price and I can win. So we have that win-win scenario.
How do you work them down when you uncover the motivation, obviously, right? But they're still off on price. And a lot of our gray area is like you're 20, 30,000 off, right? Yeah. And really it takes a skilled person to really kind of work that down to a manageable price that works for both of us. Yes. How do you advise your students, or even how do you do it to work that down?
Well, there's three specific techniques I like using at the beginning. And the second one solves this problem, or at least determines whether or not this problem is solvable. So I'll put it to you this way, Mike. Where do people tend to meet?
In the middle.
In the middle, right? That's the most fair spot.
It's a terrible spot.
Yeah. Well, it may be, except what if? This is my argument here. It's a technique I call bracketing. And bracketing means I engineer where the middle is. I make the middle exactly where I need the middle to be.
Right.
So the middle is my price. But how do you know what the middle is? Well, if I don't know, I'm going to make some numbers up here. So let's say the middle is $250,000. At $250,000 fictionally, right? That I'm going to have a deal. So I got to get them to $250,000. So if I ask them, hey, how much are you asking for the property? And they say $300,000, how high are they?
They're pretty darn high.
But exactly how high are they above my target? Yeah, 50,000. Okay. Well, they're $50,000 high. So if I want my 250 to be the middle and they're 50 high, then I have to go how much lower?
You're anchoring them at 2.
Yep, 50,000 lower. So what bracketing is engineering the middle to be equidistant between what they're asking and what you're asking. We want to make the middle there. So if they're 50 grand high, you go 50 grand low. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. We do it all the time. We definitely anchor all the time. But then, we also, because we do a lot of outbound, we train ours to go, listen, you're probably not going to close it right then. You've got to set it up for the follow-up, right? To where you're in a better position. We have a system of how to do it. I love to hear about what your system is. What would you go, hey, listen, man, there's no way, Tom, I got to be at 3. Yeah. I'm at 3, man. Maybe 280 or 290, but I can't get to I can't get anywhere near 200.
All right. Well, the first thing we're going to do is the moment you say a number, I'm going to flinch, right? I want you to feel a little uncomfortable about your number, that it's clearly not acceptable to me. And in my mind now, I'm going, okay, 380, 390. Well, I've got to move it already. I'm not there yet. But you didn't double, triple, and quadruple down on 300. You slipped a little bit. So good. Now I'm a little more interested in talking to you more. So I come in with this low offer, let's say 200, but it's not 200 because the other technique I use every single time at the beginning on these offers is a specific number. I would never offer $200,000 to start. I would though offer $203,579.
Okay. We always end with 10.
Fine.
So you're doing something very similar.
Yeah. Exact numbers don't matter. Just the fact that it is an exact number is what matters. So because now your number seems more credible. It seems like you put a lot of time and effort and thought into it. You really know what you're doing. The thing is, I pull that number out of thin air. All right. All my starting offers and then 579. I do that way to make my offer seem better thought out. And so maybe now I pull you down to, I don't know, 275, 270. So I've got a little more movement and I'm going to keep going. Now it's interesting. Something else you said is that you encourage it not to get all wrapped up right away. Oh, absolutely. I do not want you accepting my first offer. If I offer you 203, 579 and you say yes, what's the first thought in my head?
You left money on the table.
Yeah, I left money on the table. And then I'm gonna lie awake at night going, geez, how much did I leave on the table?
There's always that fine line because, you always try to get to the bottom, right? And they're trying to get the most. And sometimes where they say yes too quickly, you're like, but then there's other times where you're getting a little greedy and you try to go too low as well. And I've lost deals that way also. And that was a tough lesson, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting though. If that will scare people off from making an appropriately low offer. Mm-hmm. So what I tell my people, look, I want them, the other party, to bring you up in price. I don't want them accepting your first offer, but if you're so worried about them running or thinking you're out of your mind, then couch your offer and frame it in a way that you're implying some flexibility. Say, I haven't seen everything yet, and I would need to do more research, but my preliminary numbers, now, mind you, this number could go up, this number could go down, but what I can initially offer you is $203,579.
Right.
And so now there's a little bit of, I've implied a little softness. I've implied flexibility, which is because I want them to counter with me.
Of course. So it sounds as if you have crafted a coaching program that really incorporates, lifestyle, right? Lifestyle by design. Tell me a little bit more about it. What is the highlight points of your program, and how does it differentiate from possibly others?
Sure. Look, when I got started, my big passion was travel, right? I like drowning myself in rivers on the other side of the world. So I wanted to do more of it. It was good. So I never wanted to be quite tied down by deals. And so remember, this is the early part of the century or millennium, whatever you are, right? It was the early 2000s. And so the internet was not quite as awesome. Cell phones certainly were nowhere near as often. They weren't as smart as they are now. It wasn't as easy to do things remotely, but I managed to make sure I always did everything remotely, even if I didn't need to, because I wanted the option of doing it that way. And so I always put a very high technology leverage into what I did. That way I could do it from anywhere. Now, working from anywhere and working on a beach or working in some foreign country. I mean, that's a cliche these days because it's easy, which is good. So, but what's interesting is I find that people still think they need to be locked down to one spot or locked down to a chair or a desk. I'm thinking that's the exact life I didn't want. And one thing that I've noticed, so I've got some students that are brand new. I've got some that are intermediate and advanced, but they come back to me because they want to retool their business. And the number one thing that they messed up on, the number one thing they want to retool is that they didn't put themselves at the center of the business. And therefore, they wind up just overwhelmed about the business and everything that has to be done and all the deals and all the steps of the process. And they're a little bit miserable about it. You mentioned earlier, like having a business that effectively is the same prison cell as a job, right? I mean, great, you got out of prison, but now you're still in a cell. You just happen to own it. That's not my idea of a good time either. So what I teach everyone to do is we always start with you, your immediate family. What are your immediate goals? Let's wrap your goals around you and your lifestyle desires. Then let's wrap your business around that. So we're always working backwards from the goal. Now that we have a business wrapped around that, now let's wrap our marketing plan. We're going to develop a marketing plan and wrap it around that so that we're always working inbound. The marketing is feeding the business is feeding your lifestyle, which is feeding you. So because otherwise I think people do it backwards. They start out by, the deals at the core, or they come up with some crazy nonsense like, I want to do 100 deals a week, or I got to do 100 deals this year. They have some weird kind of braggadocio goal that doesn't actually relate to anything they actually want. Or they just start spitting out random numbers. I got to make $1 million. Why? What specifically? I mean, it's okay if that's your goal, if there's a reason for it, but if it's just because it sounds good, then what's the point? I like to get down to the real, what's the why? Like, what do you really want out of life? What are you really after? What do you want for your family? Let's build the goals around that. And you might find that it's less money than you think. And there's nothing wrong with that once you identify that and accept that.
Oh, that's brilliant, man. So I think that most people fall into that trap. A lot of people, especially as you're in this business and you start scaling and you start getting around other people, and you nailed it on the head. You start seeing these 100-door people and you're like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
You know? And there's something, I am that guy, and I've been the other guy too. And, I can't say I'm any happier.
Ain't that interesting?
Yeah. It's just,
so it's like the bragging rights. So great, you've got 100 doors, and then you meet a guy that's got 500. Yeah. And then I'm going to be as good as him. And you get 500, and you meet a guy that has 5,000, and you go, oh man, how am I ever going to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the wrong way of thinking about things. Right. And you nailed it, because we got into this business for a reason. We got into this business to have freedom and time with our families, or do whatever we want to do to make us happy. And somewhere along the way, most people in this industry lose that. And that's so amazing. You know what I mean? So it's awesome that you're helping people, guide themselves back to that strategy.
Yeah. And some of it is placing the ego aside, because I think that winds up being an ego-driven thing. Like, bragging about how many deals you have, bragging about your mind. Try being a little bit humble about it. Watch what happens. Or don't worry. Like, don't count other people's money to begin with. That's always a disaster. And don't look at their number of doors and get jealous. Why don't you ask them what their issues are and see if you actually want to be dealing with those? You might be grateful to not have the problems that they have. So there's all these little things where don't worry what anyone else's goals are. Focus on yours. And rather than just make something up that sounds good, I want 100 doors and $1 million. Well, why? Why don't you say, look, I want to make sure I don't have to work unless I want to. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of in old age, that I'm taking care of my parents in old age, that my kids will, I don't want to give them everything, right? Because then I'll spoil them. But I know that there's probably some sort of safety net that can kick in if needs be, and I'm going to train them how to do it. Why don't we focus on all that and then watch how happy you are with your life and your business, rather than being stressed out by it in the egotistical pursuit of some number that effectively doesn't matter.
You're 100% right, Tom. Absolutely. Let me ask you this, man. What are you excited about? What are you working on right now that kind of just drives you?
Interesting. Changing some things up. I sold off my last door about 9 months ago and finally got rid of the last rental. And that's not the right answer for everybody, but that was the right answer for me. And because I started scooping them up, I scooped them up. They were all in Washington, D.C. They were all in the city. And sorry, things aren't what they used to be in that city. People don't want to admit it, talk about it, but big trouble. And it was obvious even years ago. And I started the process of rehabbing things off and selling them off. So got rid of the rentals. And I may redeploy that money into different types of rentals closer to where I live now. I moved to Florida a few years ago. I may, but you know what? Right now, it's really nice not having to worry about any tenants and any toilets. And I'm A-okay with that.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, listen, where can they find you, Tom?
Online, go to tomzeeb.com. That's TOMZ as in zebra, EEB as in boy.com. That's my podcast website. If you put a / after that and put the word trifecta, you'll get a negotiation bonus. Well, I'll go deeper into those techniques I was teaching you today. And if you go tomzeeb.com/dealflow, you'll get a whole training on marketing as well. So two things, find me at tomzeeb.com, or my other training website has a lot of videos, is tractionrealestatementors.com.
Awesome. We'll have everything on the show notes.
Cool.
Tom, hey, man, I appreciate your time. Super great story. And I hope to meet you sometime soon, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right, guys. Till next week. Peace out. So that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I hope you received value from this episode. If so, please share this podcast to your brothers and sisters. And also hook up with us on Facebook, IG, and YouTube at REIL Talks. That's REIL Talks. Until next time, my friends, keep it cool, keep it real, and peace out.